When the Seoul-centric district court ruled last week on the case of a Japanese member who tried to walk away from her idol contract, the decision barely made a ripple in mainstream entertainment news in Korea. But for anyone following the NewJeans versus ADOR case, I think this could be an interesting and striking preview of where things may be headed. Because it shows exactly why NewJeans and Min Hee-jin are losing their legal fights with ADOR. Okay, and then at the end of this video, we're gonna talk about, several stuff, including the question: what does this mean for the future of NewJeans? Okay, so according to the report from a media agency called Law Talk News, reported on August 22nd, 2025. A Japanese idol member, referred to as Person A, filed a lawsuit against her management agency. She claimed their exclusive contract was invalid due to broken trust, citing conflicts with group members, mistreatment from staff, and failure to provide settlement records. But the Seoul-centric district court rejected every argument and ruled in favor of the agency. The member A, the article says, rose to prominence through an idol survival show and signed a 7-year contract with agency B in June 2023, debuting as part of Group C. We don't know, the identities of these figures. Now, barely a year later, she sought to terminate the contract, alleging the company had breached several promises and neglected fair treatment. The member presented 4 major complaints. First, the agency added a new member without obtaining existing members' consent. Second, staff members allegedly used abusive language and made threats. 3, a fellow member engaged in problematic behavior online, but management unfairly favored them. And 4th, the company failed to provide settlement statements and profit-sharing records. In other words, she argued that her company had broken promises, mistreated her, and failed to provide settlement records, and even alleging that favoritism toward another member and threats from staff had destroyed her trust in the agency, and thus she filed a lawsuit claiming her exclusive contract was invalid. But the judges rejected every single claim. When it comes to new member issue, the contract contained no clause requiring the Person A's consent for lineup changes, which the court said fell under the company's business judgment. About the abusive language, evidence was lacking as the claim relied on hearsay rather than direct proof. About the member conflict, the court found that other members had in fact been stressed by that person, A, and A's evidence, like social media accounts, was speculative. About the settlement records, the contract required disclosure only upon request, and the company did provide materials when asked. More importantly, expenses exceeded revenue by over 1.1 billion won. 1.1 billion won? That's a lot. And that left no profit to distribute. Hold on, 1.1 billion. I mean, I know like Kpop business could cost a lot, but yeah, 1.1 billion won. Indeed. Anyways, in the end, the court placed the blame squarely on the trainee. Now, the judges concluded that the rupture of trust stemmed not from the agency, but from the Person A's unilateral decision to leave the dorm and refuse to perform after their demands about a teammate weren't met. Her demands weren't met. And actions that the company took, such as changing dorm passwords or cutting off fan platform access, occurred only after the person had abandoned activities. And the judges made clear it was not the company that abandoned her, it was she abandoned the company. So the ruling seems reinforces how Korean courts often weigh contract terms and financial realities heavily in idol agency disputes. That is, without concrete evidence of abuse or financial wrongdoing, a member's personal grievances, especially those tied to group dynamics, rarely suffice to void contracts. Now, place that ruling next to what's happening with NewJeans. So if you remember, in June 2025, the Seoul High Court issued a lengthy decision rejecting NewJeans' appeal to overturn the injunction that prevents them from pursuing independent activities, which I have extensively covered in one of the videos. And the parallels are impossible to ignore. The 5 members argue that trust had collapsed after Min Hee-jin was dismissed from her role as CEO of ADOR. They insisted that she was the central premise of their contract and that without her, their relationship was broken beyond repair. But the judges were not persuaded. In fact, they carefully dismantled the idea that Min Hee-jin was the foundation of their careers. The court pointed out that the members were scouted and signed as trainees under Source Music years before ADOR was created. Their contract contained no key man clause guaranteeing Min Hee-jin's leadership. And while she undeniably shaped the group's debut, the real foundation was HYBE's financial and structural support. HYBE spent billions of Korean won spinning off ADOR as a subsidiary built solely for NewJeans, injected fresh capital to keep it afloat, and deployed its global network to promote the group. And the court decision was blunt. It is HYBE, not Min Hee-jin, that forms the core premise of NewJeans' exclusive contract. The judges also highlighted the binding force of that contract. Article 15 explicitly acknowledged that ADOR had invested enormous cost in developing NewJeans and that breaking the deal would cause irreparable harm. It even laid out heavy penalties if the members tried to leave early. The court stressed that this clause was negotiated clause by clause, meaning the members entered the deal fully aware of the obligations. What about the members' argument that losing Min Hee-jin was a change of circumstances so dramatic that the contract should be voided? Again, the judges disagreed. For such a claim to work under Korean law, the change must be unforeseeable, objective, and so severe that the purpose of the contract cannot be fulfilled. But Min Hee-jin's departure, they ruled, was neither unforeseeable nor outside their own actions. She clashed with HYBE, demanded changes to shareholder agreements, and ultimately walked away from offers to continue producing NewJeans. The members' insistence on working only with her amounted to a preference, not a legal ground for termination, the court said. Even other grievances, like ILLIT allegedly, snubbing Honey in a hallway to leaked trainee trainee videos being leaked, even other grievances fell flat. The judges noted that ADOR had protested to HYBE, sought remedies, and even hired outside firms to manage reputational damage. Far from neglecting NewJeans, ADOR actively tried to protect them, the court said. And then came the Hong Kong concert under the NJZ name. Do you remember this? For some fans, it was a show of independence. To the court, it was brand sabotage. By performing abroad under a new banner without ADOR, the members risked misleading the public into thinking their contract had already been dissolved. And the judges warned this could severely damage the NewJeans brand that HYBE and ADOR had invested so heavily to build. Now, taken together, the message is consistent with the Japanese member case. The threshold for proving a breakdown of trust is extraordinarily high. Unless there is a clear objective evidence that a company has abandoned its management duties or committed serious contractual violations, the law will not side with the people who try to walk away. like personal dissatisfaction, creative disputes, or disappointment with management do not meet the standard. So where does this leave us? I mean, the main trial on the validity of NewJeans' contract is still underway. But if the courts continue to apply the same reasoning seen in both the Japanese member case and the June ALLIT ruling, it will be extremely difficult for NewJeans to win. Because, again, the threshold for proving loss of trust is extraordinarily high. And now, a new update that we just heard about makes the picture even clearer. On August 20th, ADOR officially appointed a new CEO, Lee Do-kyung, a HYBE executive with experience in IP business and merchandising. And this marks a pivot back to normal label operations, and it closes the door on any speculation about Min Hee-jin's return. Yeah. And at the same time, the first mediation session between NewJeans and ADOR collapsed without agreement. Now, a second session is scheduled for September 11th, right? With the final ruling set for October 30th if talks fail again. And during mediation, ADOR put its cards on the table. They reminded the court, not during the mediation, but in court, ADOR reminded the court that HYBE and ADOR invested 21 billion Korean won into NewJeans, and their debut album alone cost 7 billion, with another 2 billion Korean won spent on music videos. And they stressed that NewJeans' explosive success was built on this unprecedented support, which is a point even the judges have acknowledged. ADOR also accused Min Hee-jin of orchestrating a long-term strategy to take NewJeans away, citing KakaoTalk messages where she allegedly guided parents to write protest letters and designed talking points for a media campaign. Now, NewJeans' side countered that ADOR today is no longer the company that signed with, but a shell taken over by HYBE staff. And they pointed to the, once again, ILLIT plagiarism controversy, the Ignore Honey incident, and the flood of audit-related press as proof that the company had failed to protect them. And their lawyers stressed that the members' real demand was not to walk away from ADOR entirely, but to return to the ADOR of April 2024 before Min Hee-jin's dismissal. So here we are. ADOR, armed with billions in documented support and a new CEO, showing that the company has consistently fulfilled its obligations. And on the other side, NewJeans and Min Hee-jin framing themselves as victims still, while the evidence shows they enjoyed extraordinary privileges, massive investment, and unwavering backing that most groups could only dream of. Most K-pop groups could only dream of these. The courts have been clear. Subjective disappointment is not the same as legal collapse of trust. Refusing to work simply because one producer is gone does not invalidate a contract, especially when the agency continues to provide opportunities and support. And from the Japanese member case to the NewJeans appeal ruling, the pattern is consistent. The law does not reward idols who walk away from contracts after reaping the benefits. So in that light, it's difficult to see NewJeans' position as sympathetic. They became global stars on the back of unprecedented support from HYBE and ADOR, and now argue that trust is broken only because Min Hee-jin is gone, even as ADOR tries to move forward with new leadership and continued offers of management. So, the real question now is not whether the courts will side with ADOR, but because the precedent already points in that direction, like the Japanese member case. But how NewJeans and Min Hee-jin will answer for their actions when public opinion and legal authority increasingly align against them. So, do you think NewJeans can recover their image after this? Or has their insistence on following Min Hee-jin, despite all the backing they received, already damaged their credibility beyond repair? Leave your thoughts in the comments, but as always, let's stay positive, respectful, and classy. Thank you guys. Peace and love. Bye bye.